Hey, Emily, it's great to have you. Tell us your success story. I'm super pumped about it. You just landed a big Tonka truck of a grant.
Yes, we did.
So, I guess to get us started, what grant did you just win?
So we just won the USDA's RUS, which is the Rural Utilities Service Community Connect grant, which it has been around for, I'm not sure how many years, but it's been around for some years. We won one a few years ago as well. So it's not a new program, but it is a competitive program. So
Yeah,
we just won the max award amount, which is $3 million for one of our fiber projects.
nice. Yeah, can you describe who is we, like the organization you work with?
Yes, so I'm with Arctic Slope Telephone Association Cooperative. We are a nonprofit co-op telco that provides internet, phone, and wireless service to the North Slope of Alaska. So the scope of the project is building out terrestrial fiber from Barrow or Utqiagvik on the North Slope. We have undersea fiber cable that comes in there. We're on the quintillion fiber. So we're going to tap into that undersea cable and then run terrestrial fiber from Barrow down to the community of Atkasuk, which is about 70 miles south of Barrow inland. They're one of our few non-coastal communities. And there's about 300 people there who would not otherwise be connected to high-speed broadband. They're currently served by satellite middle mile, which is very high latency, unreliable and slow, and then also cost prohibitive. So it's kind of a triple whammy there. So the high-speed broadband via the fiber middle mile will definitely make a difference. And then we will, as part of the project, we'll also build out fiber to every home in Atkasuk, which
Yeah.
you and I don't even have. Like, it's
Yeah,
pretty
actually,
crazy.
I have fiber here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. I do not. And I
Yeah.
don't think really anyone in Anchorage does either. So,
I know, that's like kind of the wild part. It's like here are these remote places that actually have
yes.
better connectivity than our urban environments. It's wild.
Yeah. It's crazy. The total project cost was estimated at about 6.5 million. You know, we're matching 100%, but that $3 million is still huge, a
Yeah.
huge chunk of it.
You had applied, maybe you didn't, but the company had applied unsuccessfully 1 year prior, right?
They had, yep.
Okay. So what would you say you got, like, what did you do differently between that year and then this year?
Yeah, so the USDA, specifically our GFR, General Field Representative, Shekinah Bailey, it's weird. He covers Kansas and Alaska, like
Oh
totally
man,
random.
that is so random.
Yeah, but he was super helpful in giving us feedback as far as our unsuccessful application and what we could potentially do different. So one of the biggest opportunities we identified was demonstrating the need better, as they put it, which ended up sort of in practice being gaining what we called support from the community. Of course, the USDA knew in the first round that the community supported it. It wasn't that it was like an opposition, but it was just demonstrating that there was that buy-in from, you know, the primary stakeholder, which is the community itself. So I it figuring out in this process, like how to actually show that, like prove it, right? That was the big thing. So we launched a pretty extensive public outreach campaign that consisted of questionnaires that went out to the community as part of like we presented to the community council and the native village, and then they disseminated these questionnaires and tried to get people to fill them out because of course we're doing this long distance, right?
Right.
And then we also had a fillable form of the same questionnaire on our website that we could direct people to. And we even had a DocuSign version of the questionnaire that people could do. So I would say point one was generating materials for people to actually fill out and for us to include in the application. That was huge. And then figuring out, you know, any way we could get them out there and get them back was the second piece of that. Just, you know, utilizing any kind of technology that we could, which that was the irony of it, is asking these people on this really slow internet to fill something out and send it back to us. But we included, people would fill it out, handwrite it, and then snap a photo and
Mm.
MMS it to us. Like we just, any way we could get it back, we
Yeah.
got creative and we made sure that we had those options available to people. And then I also reached out to a lot of different agencies, and just really the conversation was a huge piece of it, because I would talk to someone at the North Slope Borough and ask them, you know, hey, would you be willing to write a letter of support for this project and for Aztec's pursuit of this grant? And then they would lead me to someone else and to someone else. And so I ended up getting I got a letter from the Food Bank of Alaska talking about how it's really difficult to get people their SNAP benefits in the villages, because she was like, I fill out the form for them and I snail mail it to them, and they sign it and they send it back. And it's, you know, sometimes the post office isn't operating in Executive. So really just talking to people and getting them to tell that story, and encouraging people to write it down is the biggest thing. I think, you know how people in the villages love to tell their story. They'll talk to anyone, but getting them to put it down on paper that you can submit as part of your grant application is kind of that next step. And I think that's what was missed in the original process, in the original application that was not successful. So,
yeah, that's really powerful. I have a couple questions. So
yeah,
what was your response rate?
So we ended up with 25, I should have had these numbers written down for you, 25 completed questionnaires in ACCSUC, which ended up being roughly 10% of the population, which is actually pretty good. And then we had, I think, 12 letters from agencies and businesses. So I would say that was more like towards 100%, you know, response rate for agencies and businesses that actually operate in ACCSUC. And then we had about 10% of residents, which, let's see, I think there's 65 households. So that's closer to 20, 25%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things I had to do as the grant writer, and you know, grant writers wear so many hats, right? Definitely putting on my public outreach facilitator hat and sort of coaxing those stories out of people. How do you use the internet? It was all about the questions that I asked. I think that's what really got people to put those unique stories down. And one of the things was there was a guy who said, I wish I could use YouTube better to work on my cars. I have these cars, and I know that there's this resource out there that can tell me basically how to fix anything, but I can't, a video literally won't load because of the crappy internet. So, putting that facilitator hat on, helping people tell their story, and then convincing them that it's worth taking the time to write down for me was huge.
Did you integrate those stories from the supporting materials into the narrative, and how so?
We did. Great question. So the USDA's application is very sort of structured in the way they want it. You kind of have to figure out where to fit the information that you want to put in that may not be obviously required, even if you know it should be there. Yeah. So in the executive summary, we ended up telling the story. And we did things like we had quote boxes, within the narrative.
Nice.
And we pulled quotes from the questionnaires we got and the letters we got to really drive home whatever point we were trying to make. We did a couple of pie charts that ended up looking really good, where we said what percentage of responses said that they would use the internet for education, and what percentage said that they would use it to sell goods and boost their income, and what percentage said they'd use it to talk to relatives. And that was a really impactful graphic, I thought.
100%. Did you do Go ahead.
That kind of makes the connection for whoever is reading and reviewing the application, because they may not make caribou skin masks like the people in ACCSUC, but they can see, they're starting a home business. I can appreciate that.
Did you also do the full layout of the proposal, or did you have some graphic design help?
We had some help. We hired Umiak Environmental. They're a subsidiary of UIC, and I'd worked with those girls in the past on different projects, and they're just really great and resourceful and kind of jacks of all trades. So Jills of all trades. So they helped, but honestly, there was really nothing fancy about it. I mean, we used Word. We just made fancy text boxes and pie charts. It could have been as elaborate as we wanted, but I think focusing on, the content and then just really making it eye-catching. So
Yeah, but even it is just even a bold and italic
right.
can be a powerful tool to use for the skimmer.
Yep. Yeah, and I was able to use those for presentations I made. Like I'd go tease them out of the Word document. So I felt like it was a good investment of time, just we really, I think maybe inadvertently made it a point to identify what our strongest bullets were and really call those out. And then I ended up using those throughout the year in presentations I made and reports I did and stuff. So
what was the biggest unexpected headache? Like something you did not see that took a lot longer or it was just harder than you thought it would be?
Well, the USDA's application process is very cumbersome. So I think I didn't do a very good job of anticipating the amount of busy work that was going to be involved with just checking all the boxes, right? So I think my biggest lesson learned was I didn't know what a realistic goal was for the amount of letters and questionnaires we wanted to receive back, right? I had people saying, well, why aren't we getting more letters? And I was saying, well, we are getting a lot. It's just not, there's only 250 people that live there. Like it's, right. So I think setting realistic goals and I don't know how you come up with that number. I mean, it is sort of arbitrary no matter what, but thinking about it in percentages, like, okay, my goal is to get a letter from 20% of residents or 10% of residents. And because there was a lot of time spent in trying to get the numbers, and at one point I had to be like, guys, we have what we need. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think just in terms of the numbers, 10 to 15 letters of support is excellent.
Yeah.
It's the sweet spot to be in. So to land at 13, wonderful.
I think one other quick point I have is the other headache was defining rurality. The way that the USDA defines rurality is population density, and the way that our communities are in Alaska, our population density does not meet the definition of rurality because they're located in these tiny little centers, right? And so we really had to advocate. Luckily, we have a lobbyist who was helping redefine things, but we ended up having to explain in the narrative, like, look, this is how far we are from any major road. You could only get here by flying or, well, Akasuk is just flying, unless there's an ice road or a winter trail. So
was there anything that you learned from when we did a grant writing workshop together that became useful and that you leveraged when you pursued this grant?
Yes. I think that your workshop definitely gave me the confidence to like fake it till I made it on this. Yeah, because I had just taken that workshop, and then 2 months later, someone was like, "Here you go, you're writing this grant." And I was like, "Oh, Meredith says I can, so I guess I can." I think you really helped me with the budget perspective because I can see how someone would just get totally bogged down by the budget portion, like, because they want this number, right? And they want to know what you're going to spend it on. And you're trying to figure out what you can match and what you can't. And so I think knowing kind of what I was in for with that, using your spreadsheet, that really helped a lot. And then I think setting up the application, like I knew going in, I needed a solid outline. I needed to use their requirements to make the bones of the outline, but then kind of put in the pieces that I knew I needed. Like I said earlier, knowing what needed to be in there to get the points. So I probably spent more time on the outline than I would have if I hadn't taken your workshop, and it paid off because I was ready. I had the bones, and especially having the contractor working for me, having UMIAC work for me, because they were sending me content and I had stuff coming in from over here. And so having that outline to just go back and say, okay, where does this belong? Like, where do I shove this? That really saved me a lot of time.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's awesome. Cool. That's great to know that you use those two little nuggets. Those
I definitely did. I'm sure I used a bunch of other stuff too, but
no, that's
it's like the Meredith voice in the back of my head.
Yeah. Setting up a narrative skeleton is such a big deal, and it's so easy to want to skip it. And I'll catch myself even doing it on little pieces that I need to write. Like, I'll just start from the top. And then you are just floundering, spending so much time deleting a sentence, retyping a sentence. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yes.
No, that's exciting. What else would you want, fellow students of Learn Grant Writing to know?
I think that you shouldn't be afraid to contact the agency or whoever like I don't know, maybe I called kind of too much. I don't think so. He still answers my phone calls. So, but like ask the question, right? Because sometimes I would call him and I wouldn't even have a specific question. I would just be like, I'm really stuck on this. And talking it out with him, I would land on an answer. And maybe you have a resource like you, Meredith, or maybe you have a friend in the same industry or something that you could do that with too. For me, it was our field representative with USDA often that I would call and say, I'm stuck here. So I want to say, don't be afraid to ask for help, but you're not really asking for help. You're just like using someone as a sounding board, because often with all the different requirements and all the information coming in and all the ideas that you have to make a really good application, you can get bogged down. And sometimes it helps to just use a lifeline and like spew at someone all of these things that are in your head, and then you can kind of organize them. And 100%. I think that's really helpful. And then kind of along the same lines, contacting the funding agency to ask them about requirements like the rurality piece. Or another thing that I've been working on with another funding opportunity with USDA is their definition of farm. People don't farm on the North Slope, but they hunt and they gather and they fish. And we're with this new program finding a way to redefine what is a farm, and we're able to say, hey, subsistence activities, traditional subsistence activities meet this definition of farming because they're producing an agricultural product of more than $1,000 a year. They're feeding their family, they're trading for other things. And so that's another, I mean, don't be afraid to question the requirements, because certainly in Alaska, because we just don't fit in any box. So getting creative with it and figuring out how you might be able to, because as long as you can prove it to them with, a letter from the native village testifying that this many people participate in subsistence, or however you go about it. So you just have to get creative and then go the extra step to document it and prove it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful bit of advice. Totally. That's so sweet. Well, thank you for sharing all of these good golden nuggets. I learned a thing or two, which is awesome. So I'm like proud of you. I mean, you went from 0 to 100 real fast. Like this is 1 year ago. Am I right? Like, yeah.
Don't mess around.
So you had never, ever done a grant before, right?
Nope. I had done proposals. Like, I feel like writing proposals for the consulting firm is kind of similar, right? Like you're winning a job. But it certainly doesn't match the effort that's required for winning a federal grant. But yeah, that kind of prepared me for it. And then I took your workshop and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this.
I can do this. Yes, right. I think, half the battle is having confidence in ourselves and breaking down our own like mental barriers. We get in our way more often than we ought to.
Yep. And reaching out, and realizing you're not alone.
Yeah, 1000%. So true. Right on. Well, that's rad. Cool. Keep us updated on all the things that you continue to land these big fish. I'm super proud of you.
Okay. Thank you.
Right on.